There he is. There he is. Just in time at the buzzer.
That was that 4-4 had to kick in, man. You know, that 4-4 had to kick in. Still got it a little bit.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. And joining me tonight is the sports director at the WUFO Sports Report, Muki Hawkins. Mook, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Carrying my axe, man. I'm carrying my axe. Wait a minute. Hold on. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, here
Where's
it
what?
is. Carrying my
Yes. We are less than 48 hours away from the Bills cutting down one of the most talented rosters they've had, and probably, I mean, definitely in my lifetime. They're cutting it down to 53 in less than 48 hours on Saturday. There's a lot to talk about. I mean, is there though?
Yeah,
is there going to be many surprises, Mook?
Not as what we really think, due to this pandemic. And, it's kind of hard to really evaluate. So if I'm a coach, I'm basically, it's kind of like, I'm just going to stick to what I know with this one, So that's what I took from it. Like, I mean, I can say this now, this year that this roster that GM Brandon Beane has put together is the best training camp roster that, in their era. And it's just tough from top to bottom. But, there's some few surprises and, there's some usual suspects, if you will, when it comes down who's going to make this 53.
So with that being said, I think we should start off with the quarterbacks. And I don't know. This is one of the – I think it's pretty cut and dry. Do you think it is? Do you think they keep all three, or do you think Matt Barkley or Jake Fromm are getting cut?
No, I think they keep all three. They keep all three. They draft Fromm for a reason. I know you put yourself in the doghouse with, young comments, immaturity, stuff like that. But we're not gonna hold that against him. And but they, as far as the growth and what's needed for him as far as his development going forward, they're going to keep him on the roster. So the Bills will hold 3. Davis Webb.
Man, that knife.
See you in the summer.
That knife. Is it an expensive knife? Can you cut any and everything in the kitchen?
Just a few players.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think they're going to keep all 3 quarterbacks. Davis Webb, yeah. I don't think he has any practice squad eligibility left. I'm not certain about that. But I do think they're going to keep Josh Allen, obviously, and then Matt Barkley as well as Jake Fromm. I thought Jake Fromm was an excellent pick when they made it, and obviously you touched on the few unfortunate comments that came out publicly that were made a couple years ago. And like you said, we're not going to hold that against him. He still has a place on this roster because he's a talented player.
True.
With the running back room, there's a little bit of a conversation to be had. Obviously, you're going to have your 2 young backs, with Motor and Zach Moss. But after that, it gets kind of interesting because you also have TJ Yeldon. You also have Tywan Jones. You have Antoine Williams, who they just brought back. And you also have Christian Wade, obviously. So there's a lot of names to keep an eye out here for this roster and who may or may not get cut.
I think the Bills only keep 3. To be quite honest, the Bills keep 3. That's Motor, Moss, and Yeldon. Christian Ray still has a year left on the on the pathway program, so he's going to go back being designated to that practice squad guy. You look at Williams. He just signed on, so he's going to be basically another practice squad guy. So out of that running back position, you look at Tywan Jones. Tywan Jones could, more or less be on the PUP list with, the knee injury or on the IR as well. So, with the depth that the Bills have in other positions, I think this is, a legitimate excuse to only hold 3 on the roster right now. Depending on what they really have invested in Motor Singletary and the way Zach Moss has been having a great camp so far. So I don't know who started that Fournette rumor yesterday, but we know that was pretty fun.
A little bit of BS there from the reporters. No, it's leaking some stuff.
They was just leaking some. Not the time off the 53, but quick insight on that note. Patriots did have an offer on the table, and it was just rumored out. It came from Fournette's camp that they wanted to start a bit more because he wanted to recruit some of that $4 million he lost by getting cut in Jacksonville. So, why not start a bit war with your competitor, which is us? But it didn't make sense. I had the opportunity to talk with Mr. Girardi. I reached out to him, and he told me basically it was just, it was all over the place, and that was just something that was devised within out of his camp. And then Evan Laser, he's a beat reporter out of New England. He confirmed that as well. So we all see what happened. He went to Tampa for 3.5 with incentives. So we know what it was about with him at the end of the day. Some of that stuff was true, but the interest from the Bills, they would have traded for him before the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I was all on board with possibly inquiring about Leonard Fournette before they drafted Zach Moss.
Right.
But after they drafted Zach Moss in the 3rd round, I think it's kind of redundant to add another feature back like that because Leonard Fournette, he was a former top 5 pick, and he's a talented player. Obviously, he's had his issues with injuries and attitude issues in Jacksonville with Doug Marrone, but I felt like it didn't really line up correctly for it to make sense to add Leonard Fournette onto this roster, because the room is what it is right now, and I tend to agree with you. I think they're going to keep 3 on the roster. I think they will, but I think the 3 is going to be Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, and Tywan Jones. I don't think I'd love to see them keep TJ Yeldon.
Yeah,
but I like TJ Yeldon. I like what he brings to the table, but Brian Dable didn't utilize him at all last year. Like there's nothing on his resume from the Bills for them to have a valid reason to keep him. There's nothing coming out about them saying they love TJ Yeldon and what he shows on the practice field. Don't get me wrong. In my opinion, I think he would have been one of the most incredible assets to that offense last year as any, because you're talking about a receiving back out of the backfield, someone for Josh to just dump it down to when teams are running cover zero nonstop at him. And, that's an asset. He was the best receiver in the game against the New England Patriots, and that was probably the best defense they faced all last year. And that I'm referring to the first game when Josh left the game with a concussion and Matt Barkley came in. And he was eating him up. I think he had like 60 yards receiving.
Yeah.
He was an asset to this or he could have been an asset to that offense last year, and they desperately needed it, but they didn't use him for some reason. I believe it was the Frank Gore aura about him. They didn't want to disrespect Frank Gore and inactivate him in favor of TJ Yeldon, which I understand, but you essentially just wasted a year of that man's contract. So now he's on I think this is the last year of his deal, right?
Yeah, this is the last year of his deal, but they could, for what they're paying him, they can afford that. You got a guy that's durable. He gives you the size of a power back, but he's twitchy enough to be a little bit more elusive, and he can catch. So I think it was hit or miss. It was hit or miss with Dable because I would rather have TJ Yeldon out there on empty instead of DeMarco. So
exactly.
I look at what are you doing as far as putting the right personnel on the field at times, and that's something I hope that to see that he's developed as being a play caller with all the weapons that he have now. But you look at TJ Yeldon is quick. He had a good camp this year too. So here's another guy that knows your system. He has the size to run in between those tackles, but he can also help you in the receiving game. And so you keep a guy like that around. Tywan Jones they brought him more or less for special teams. So he's going to probably be on the PUP list, depending on how severe that knee injury is. You're going to see how severe people's injuries are, with this roster right now. So how severe is, with Crawford is okay, but how severe are certain injuries that we don't know about with these hamstrings and stuff like that. So that's going to play a factor with this 53-man roster too. But yeah, the Bills keep just three running backs right now on the roster.
Another rookie mistake, Muki. I forgot to mention. Everybody, leave your questions, comments, and concerns in the comments below. We will address them throughout the duration of the show.
I see them on there, man. I see they keep chiming them things in, man. Whatever y'all want to know, we can answer them today.
This thing's blowing up right now. We're going crazy. Shout out to Jeremy Turner Montgomery, handling the cold front right here. Oh, Greg Tomsted's tuning in.
Greg, my man, Greg. Hey, Greg, I got to call you after this. That's why, I was prepping for this, my guy. I will definitely call you soon after this.
Now, an interesting conversation because of what has occurred recently with the fullback position. It seems like they're going to go with Pat DeMarco at fullback. That's going to be his spot this year. And going into camp, the player that I'm alluding to is obviously Reggie Gilliam. So I guess we can go hand in hand with this conversation, go fullback, tight end, or whatever. I thought coming into camp that Reggie Gilliam was going to be a breath of fresh air compared to the play style that Pat DeMarco brings to the field. Because you talk about you just mentioned it, TJ Yeldon out there and empty instead of having Pat DeMarco. I'd most certainly rather have Reggie Gilliam out there than Pat DeMarco and empty. Obviously that's not an ideal situation either way with the personnel setting, but Reggie Gilliam is an athlete. And that's a position where I feel like this offense just having a utility back in that essence at the fullback position. If he can block, great. And we all know he can play special teams with his. I believe he had 6 blocks while playing in college. So what is it about Reggie Gilliam that really kind of gives Pat DeMarco the upper hand in this scenario?
Well, Pat DeMarco's been in the league for 8 years.
I'll do it.
That pretty much is really that keeps you way up here and way down here. When it comes to that experience and playing, you got to understand with this pandemic's going on, we need all the guys that know my stuff on this team. I need all that experience. You need all the experience you can get. It hasn't been a preseason. Okay, so it's I got to go with what I know at this point now. My draft picks, I mean, it always goes down to what Brandon Bean says in those meat and potato rounds, which is, the third, fourth, fifth round. You want to bring a guy in that, can push a starter or eventually become a starter, So that's why I say Fromm makes the spot. That's why I say Gabriel Davis, they makes the team. With Zach Moss, we already knew that they was going to make the team. So, can he push DeMarco for a roster spot? And DeMarco hasn't even participated really, but only 1 week, and now he has to change his position with DeMarco ain't even being around. So you've been getting all of those reps, and Coach McDermott went on to say that it's a learning curve for him, and he still has to grasp and pick up on some things. So I don't think that he's quite ready to become a true NFL fullback, but he's undersized as a tight end. So I mean, hey, you just have to wait and see on that. You just have to wait and see on that right there. But definitely, like I agree everything you say, CG, in reference to the guy. He was definitely a special team stud at Toledo. But that NFL is a different animal, especially when you out there playing with grown men and you never really played at that pace. Me being a coach, I'm going to trust a more savvy veteran. I understand that he's injured. I mean, even the money right now don't even matter, because we still have enough money to do whatever we need to do. So they can withstand keeping DeMarco on the PUP list until he's healthy enough to play. So that's why I say Gilliam, he's moved over for a tight end for a specific reason. He won't make the team, but he'll definitely be on the practice squad.
See, the interesting thing about Reggie Gilliam moving to tight end, you and I kind of briefly talked about this, is when Brian Dable was in Miami, no, he didn't have an illustrious career with the Dolphins as an offensive coordinator. But the one bright spot of that offense was a mid-round draft pick, slightly undersized tight end, but definitely athletic, and that being former Bills tight end Charles Clay. And you could definitely draw parallels between Reggie Gilliam's play style as well as Charles Clay. And it's not like Charles Clay was this highly touted tight end who was a freak athlete out of college that was going to go in the first 2 days of the draft. No, he was a mid-round pick. I believe he was a fifth-round pick, if I'm remembering correctly. But I'm interested to see if they want to keep him around to try and mold him into that type of football player for this offense. Because don't get me wrong, I love what Dawson Knox brings to the table. I love the potential that Tommy Sweeney has. But if they could have an athletic tight end of that variety, I think it'd be a spark plug to the entire offense.
Yeah. I mean, in due time, once he developed, the potential was there. And one thing I can say that the Bill has been good on is developing talent. They've been drafting well, but they've been developing as well. And, the jury is still out, but it's just too early. I don't see him really flashing to the point where he's warranted playtime, to the point where you can't beat a guy out. That rule say you can't beat a guy due to injury. Maybe in this case, if you're not Tom Brady, only person I know that was excluded from that was Tom. So don't lose your job to injury. So DeMarco's on the PUP list until he gets healthy, and Gilliam, he goes to the practice squad.
Now, sticking with the tight end position, do you have any kind of surprising keeps or cuts for this position? Because I think it's kind of straightforward with Lee Smith, Tyler Croft, with all that guaranteed money getting moved into this year. Obviously, Dawson Knox. But then you have Jason Kroom and Nate Becker. I don't think Nate Becker is going to make the team, but Jason Kroom's definitely an interesting conversation because you were saying he's had kind of a strong camp.
Yeah, it's been some guys that's really had a sneaky camp. When you really look at it, Kroom has been a sneaky camp. He's been healthy. So we get the opportunity to really see his talent. And, he had to been lingering around for a reason, right? So he I got the opportunity to watch the scrimmage. And, basically that was pretty much the most heated thing out of the training camp was that. So I think he played well enough, but the deciding factor to me boiled down with Lee Smith. Okay, he is old and he's up there and he can, as far as money being handled. But once again, the Bills can withstand that. And the only thing that I kept Lee Smith on the roster was because he's the backup long snapper. All right, he's the backup long snapper. So if anything happened to Reed Ferguson, who's going to long snap the ball? So we cannot get caught with our pants down in the event somebody goes down. You have to have a backup. So he is the backup long snapper. That's why Lee Smith stays on the team. So if people see that tomorrow, hey, it could be a surprise. They could say, hey, we not paying you enough money, bringing the lower tier guy to back up long snap. Who knows? But as of today, projected, I'm keeping Lee Smith because of that reason. If that's the case, Jason Kroom will be that guy, and they'll bring another just long snapper in. But at some point, somebody got to hold up a roster spot if they're going to do that. So once again, it comes to sticking with what you know, and Lee Smith is it remains on the roster because of that.
Now, see, I feel like because this is a very different preseason for everybody, not just the players, but also people who cover the team. Because we don't have any kind of preseason games to go off of. We don't have anything to evaluate. And I feel like there's a ton of players that fit this mold, that can fit this description, that they would have benefited a whole hell of a lot from having at least 2 preseason games. And one of those players is definitely Jason Kroom. Because you touched on it, how he looked okay in the scrimmage. And I feel like if he had some opportunities in game situations, for say he plays a whole second half, he has a lot of time to shine. He has a lot of time to put on display his skill set, which no one can really say for certain how good or talented he is, or if he really belongs on a 53-man roster, because it's been so long since he's been fully healthy. And by the sounds of it, he's now fully healthy. And it's just unfortunate that the circumstances have led us to have this kind of preseason to where he doesn't have a true opportunity to showcase his skill set.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the part that sucks because, not only for him, it's a lot of people, on that team that's been playing well, and, they don't get that true evaluation because there's no preseason. So due to that, that's why the NFL, allowed teams to retain 16 players and designate 4 untouchable guys on a week-to-week basis. So, that's why you're going to see, the Bills roster is at 80. So they cut down to 53. You can keep 16. So that's 69. So the
Does he have practice squad eligibility left? I don't think. I feel like he doesn't. If someone in the comments didn't like, that'd be great.
He does, and that's the thing. He might have timed himself out with the practice squad.
Mm-hmm. So I think it's kind of similar to what happened to Eddie Yarbrough. It's gotten to the point where his position has gotten filled out, and he's been good enough to stick on the roster for the last couple of years. But we talk about what Brandon Beane has been building here in Buffalo, and the team is only getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And as you touched on, players are developing and they're panning out. Mid-round picks are panning out, and eventually the team's just too good for certain players to be on the roster. And I think that conversation, just that. I'm sorry?
No, go ahead. I'll let you finish up.
I think that really kind of that whole point really leads us into the conversation about the wide receiver room very, very well. Because you're talking about a room where you got guys that we know they're going to keep. We know they're going to keep John Brown. We know they're going to keep Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs, and their 2 draft picks, Isaiah Hodgins and Gabriel Davis. That's where really we kind of really leave off. After then, there's all sorts of opinions. They'll keep 6, they'll keep 7. They're only going to keep Roberts, or they're going to keep McKenzie or Duke or Foster or Muki. What do you think they're going to do with the wide receiver position?
Well, we know Diggs is a lock. We know Beasley's a lock. We know Brown's a lock. We know Davis is a lock. So that's your 4 guys that we know are locks. 5th guy coming in on that will be Andre Roberts. Andre Roberts will be your 5th guy on that roster. He's a Pro Bowler. You can't cut a Pro Bowler. Mm-hmm. Especially during this time, and field position is so key. Isaiah McKenzie has not done enough to, seat him in that regard. So I say Roberts is the 5th guy. The 6th guy will be Duke Williams. Will be my 6th guy. I just don't think that Duke, once again had an opportunity to really show itself in the setting, but he's been a dog in training camp. And once again, you don't play a guy in the playoff game and he has most hits and all of a sudden he don't make the team the next season. So I think the Bills keep him along as your sixth guy. Now my seventh guy, Isaiah Hodgins. I think Isaiah makes the squad. This is the year where we balance it out with Smurfs and trees. All right, we gotta have some trees for Josh this year. You're gonna see a big difference when Josh can throw to a tree because he's a tree himself. All right, it's a different trajectory on the ball. It's different ball. It's different, ball location, and he can see a 6'3", 6'4" target easier 30, 40 yards down the field than he can see a 5'10", 5'11" guy. So, I think it's all about the height this year in that receiver room. We already have the short, shifty guys that can create space. And I think Duke Williams and Isaiah Hodgins make the squad. McKenzie, he's the odd man out. I mean, he does the same thing that Beasley does. He does the same thing that Stephon Diggs does. He does the same thing that John Brown does. So I don't see him in any realm or form where he will be an asset. Duke Williams, once again, he's 6'3". He's been a dog in camp. He showed improvement on certain things he needs to work on. I mean, he's been making some spectacular catches, going after it, being aggressive, and that's what we need out of somebody that's 6'3", 225. We need that. So I don't get rid of that. Maybe they can try to find a trade spot for him. I wouldn't be mad at that to get something for him. But, at this day and age, you need those big guys. And I just don't see Duke Williams not making a team after the postseason he had. I just don't say that. He hasn't had a bad camp. As you can see, he's been highlighted a few times in training camp. So I just don't see where he doesn't make the team unless it's more or less special teams. If it boils down to 6 guys or whatever the case may be, special teams might be his downfall because he more or less is not on special teams. So,
see, here's what I struggle with Duke Williams, honestly, is you talked about his 10 target performance in Houston last postseason. Now, you've been witness to it firsthand, and we've all seen clips from this year's practice or from this year's practices. We've all seen Duke Williams do it in preseason games last year, such as against the Lions, where he just jumps over these dudes. And I'm sorry, I wish I had the clip, one of the clips of him just jumping over. I mean, I could play one right from practice, but we see these clips where he makes these insane catches, man, where he just goes all for it, and he gets it every time. Like, I see what you're saying. The dude's a dog. The dude has that mentality to be one hell of a football player. But it's not all about mentality. It's about natural physical gifts. And the dude, I've never seen him be refined enough as a route runner and be able to create enough space with that size, because I understand he has this size, but in Houston last year, where he had to make a play on the ball like he has in practice, like he has in preseason games against players who, quite honestly, aren't going to make football teams or 53-man rosters in the regular season. He has done it against those sorts of players. But when it came time to do it in the postseason, he failed to rise to the occasion and make a play against a starting. I mean, that Texans secondary was trash, but a quote unquote starting caliber corner in the NFL in the postseason. I understand it's a bit much it's a tall task. It's not an easy thing to do, to jump over a dude and make a snag over a grown ass man, but that's what he does well. That's what Duke Williams is for. That 6'3", 230-pound frame that can just body some dudes, and he couldn't do it. And to be quite honest, I feel like that's why they brought in Isaiah Hodgins, because he can do it, and he comes down with everything. I feel like Isaiah Hodgins almost kind of seamlessly replaced Duke Williams' spot on this roster, as you have far more potential with the future of Isaiah Hodgins, I feel, than you do with Duke Williams.
Where did you see Isaiah Hodgins make all those catches?
Not in the NFL, but he definitely did in Oregon State. That I agree. I see what you're saying with that.
Right.
Now he has to prove, because that same point that I make can be flipped on Isaiah Hodgins. But that's why I also touched on that he has the potential, and I feel like that he can get to that point. But if he doesn't, then he doesn't. But I personally do not feel that Duke Williams has a spot on this roster. And you touched on earlier, and I want to bounce this off you and see what you think. You touched on how Tywan Jones may start this season on the PUP list. You kind of have a hole there, Gunner. You kind of do. does this open a spot for Robert Foster? Or you're shaking your head? You don't think so?
Right. Well, that's what I was about to say. If Duke Williams don't make the rosters because of the importance of Robert Foster on special teams, and that's the only reason that he doesn't make it. Now, mind you, both of these guys still have practice squad eligibility. But do you risk it? Do you risk putting those guys on there, and do you juggle and make those one of your touchable four horsemen? During the course of the week, it's a lot of things that they can do. It's going to be real interesting to see how Brandon Beane juggles this untouchable player, on a week-to-week basis without losing anybody. So that's one new thing that the NFL has put together that I would like to see how GMs in the NFL are going to shuffle the deck and try to hide their player on a week-to-week basis. But I think, if it comes down to special teams being a valuable asset on special teams, Robert Foster makes the squad. He makes the 53. But if it doesn't boil down to that, and as far as, I'm going to go with Duke just because we don't need Duke to be the greatest route runner out there. That's why we got Stephon Diggs. All right. So, I mean, there was some issues in that game. Duke Williams had an opportunity to make some plays. He had a nice drop in that end zone, and I saw that. Yes, he did. But the way he's addressed training camp seems that, he's attacking the ball. That's something he didn't do in that Houston game. He didn't attack the ball. If he attacks the ball, hey, we're still moving on in Kansas City. But, that's what you want to see. You want to see growth. You want to see improvement. I don't want to get rid of a guy who knows my stuff right now for somebody who's still grasping the playbook. And, he hasn't endured a true physicality in the NFL. I mean, you look at it, in the scrimmage, he had a red jersey on, by the way, he was making all these catches. Now, we understand his catch radius is goofy, but it still remained to be seen in the highest level, which is the NFL. And, during the scrimmage, I heard crickets out of him. You know what I mean? So, he has some ways to go, but I still feel that he has the opportunity to make the team as well. But I'm going with Duke over Hodges all day.
Hey, man, that's why I love hearing your opinions. You see the stuff firsthand. I'm just speculating, not even a spectator. I'm just going off of what I hear and see on Twitter, pretty much.
Yeah, Robert Foster, definitely. That's why I say it's going to be a toss-up, but both of those guys still have practice squad eligibility. So do you juggle and say, hey, Duke ain't going to make the squad. We're going to designate you to the practice squad and then juggle him on a week-to-week basis? You can do that, but you're gambling by doing that. So, it's going to be pretty interesting to see. That's going to be the biggest thing. Like, how many receivers that the Bills are going to keep and what receivers?
Right.
So I think McKenzie's on the way out. That's my guy. But we got three guys that could do the same thing he does.
Better and do more. That's right. The thing. It's just, you're right. You said it at the start when we started talking about Isaiah McKenzie. He's just the odd man out. Now, I think the Bills' offensive line, I'm not going to say they're the best offensive line in football, but they're definitely the deepest. They're definitely the deepest offensive line that has the most potential, the most upside, a lot of big names on that offensive line. Do you think anybody surprising gets cut? Do you think they have some second thoughts about Ty Nsekhe or Darrell Williams? Do you think there's any names that we're going to look at that on Saturday and be like, oh, wow, I was not expecting that? Yeah, I don't either.
I don't see no really shake up in the line. I got D. Dawkins, I got Nsekhe, Derek Williams. I got winners make the squad. Isaiah Spain, Ford. I do have some surprises. I have Ryan Bates, and I have Mr. Walton makes the squad. I think makes the squad, the guard, yeah. He makes this.
Now, the interesting thing is you touched on Walton, who is also an undrafted free agent, but one of my favorite undrafted free agent pickups aside from Reggie Gilliam was Trey Adams. Like I said, I can't evaluate. I can't watch it firsthand. I can't see it. I can't see how these guys are performing. I want to know what you've seen from Trey Adams. Do you think, obviously he doesn't make the team in your opinion. Why?
The upside is there, but everything else isn't. It's like he had that one good year and, he just dealt with a lot of injuries. And, that plays up here. That plays in your mindset too. And, the pandemic didn't help it, as far as conditioning and stuff like that before you actually was cleared to come to camp. These guys had to sit around for a couple of months, waiting to, get to their new homes and do their strength and conditioning on a different scale. So I think he's gonna be a development squad. He's gonna be a project, but the upside is there. I mean, he has the prototype of Inseki, being 6'8", 330 pounds. He has the length, but he has to learn. I mean, he has Bobby Johnson, one of the best O-line coaches in the NFL, to learn from. So there's no rush in his development. So, he won't make the squad, but he'll definitely be on that practice squad. He'd definitely be on the practice. He was one of my favorites too. I mean, because I seen him on the list. I mean, he should have got drafted, but for us to get him as an undrafted free agent, I was really excited that we got some namesake guys. Some maulers, but they need to develop. He played in cold weather, so I like that as well. So that won't affect too much. He just has to develop his game. He's got to sharpen his tools a little bit more and get in a little bit more NFL shape.
To be quite honest, I don't think he's going to stick on the practice squad. I think somebody's going to snatch him up because I don't envision him being one of the 4 players they protect. And I also don't see an NFL roster or just knowing the lack of bodies for offensive linemen and high quality offensive linemen in the NFL. There is an offensive line where Trey Adams makes that team in the league. And it's just not the Bills, I don't think.
Trey Adams won't be picked up by any other team.
You don't think so?
He went undrafted. A team is going to pick up a veteran that gets cut before they pick up Trey Adams.
Right.
So Trey Adams will be a development project. Because at the end of the day, he chose to come to Buffalo. What other team wanted him, in the free agent pool to make him choose Buffalo? So, I don't think he goes anywhere. He stays on the practice squad. He develops, and, he competes for a spot next year. That time in Inseki, I think it might be his last year. Who knows? He's up there in age. He's 34 years old. So, he got nothing but time to sit and wait. And, hopefully he'll have his time after he develops in 1 year.
There's definitely a room for, and I felt like that's what the addition of Trey Adams was going to be, and Walton as well, is I felt like in the draft at some point they needed to sign a developmental tackle, somebody just to storing your roster, storing your practice squad. And I thought Trey Adams was an excellent an excellent choice because you're talking about the dude who he's built like 6'8". You cannot teach that. You cannot teach that arm length. Do you have any clue how absurdly long his arms are? That's insanity. It's just like Daryl Johnson. And speaking of Daryl Johnson, the defensive line, and I've seen people blowing up the comments. I've seen everybody asking, and this is a big conversation. It's an $8 million question, Mookie. Trent Murphy, does he make the team? I want to be careful with that knife.
Now it's time to say goodnight to Trent Murphy. Trent Murphy does not make this team. All right, Trent Murphy do not make the team. But I had to beat myself up with this. Because his training camp has been solid. You got to look at, I got to stick with what I know. Can I withstand keeping him on a roster for $8 million? Maybe this is his year to overturn as the player that we brought him in, that we paying him for. Who knows? He may pay up to that potential and, be that stud, depending on what he has around him. Because it's not going to be a lot of pressure for him to produce now that we have Mario Addison, that we have Quentin Jefferson, we have Vernon Butler. So we have a healthy Jerry Hughes. We have an AJ Espinoza. But Mike Love had a better camp to me than Trent Murphy. Mike Love makes this squad over Trent Murphy. And, that's where it is. That's what I feel. I was at that scrimmage, and if we're basing this thing upon that scrimmage, Mike Love was Rec Shop Radio out there. So if this the only physical contact game that with that game type of intensity, and then I only get one look at that, based upon that, Mike Love makes this squad over Trent Murphy. I want to see guys who can flash when the lights are on, when it's game time. Not a guy that's, okay, I'm going to do my job and be where I need to be within the scheme. Are you going to make plays in this scheme? And Mike Love was out there making plays in that scheme. So that's, pretty much where I'm at with that. Trent Murphy doesn't make the squad. You got Daryl Johnson, who makes this squad. You got Mike Love, who makes this squad. You got AJ Espinoza, Mario Addison, and Jerry Hughes. Those are your defensive ends. So the Bills got 5 edge rushers.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Trent Murphy. I didn't like the move from the beginning. I just didn't. Yeah. I didn't like it when they signed him in 2017, and I've been waiting for them to cut him ever since. And they have their opportunity right now. Save $8 million. I'm not sure what the Bills salary cap is sitting at currently.
I think it's like 27 million. Don't quote me on it.
If someone in the comments could shoot us the Bills salary cap, that'd be excellent. But I do know Brandon Beane loves having a little cushion. And if it is 27, that's a decent amount of cushion. And if you cut him, that goes up to what? 34, right? So that's a good chunk of change to go into the season with availability as far as financials are concerned. Right. But with Trent Murphy, it's never been enough. Like what he contributes is just there's not much to it. He's just ever since that. I wouldn't even say it's ever since the ACL injury, but it really has been. He had that 1 year where he flashed, and then he got hurt, and then he still got a decent contract from Buffalo. And we have yet to see that form of Trent Murphy where he's putting up double-digit sacks. And it's just, I never liked the move. I understood the move. He was pretty much a bridge player, in my opinion. That's how I saw it. It was a bridge player until the Bills built this defensive line to what we see it as now. Because now, last year, if you caught Trent Murphy, it's like, okay, now we're forcing Daryl Johnson to have a contributing role onto this defensive line in order to have our rotation going at a healthy pace. But now that you built your depth, you have players like Quentin Jefferson who can bump outside, not to mention AJ Epinesa and Mike Love, who has done nothing but impress ever since. If he's healthy, he's done nothing but impress, from what I've heard. Because last year he had a damn good camp. He got hurt, and we got the comment, $17 million currently, so they cut him. He had the 7, right? I thought it was 17. But here's the thing about – I think it's just the perfect time and place for Trent Murphy to just not make this roster. And I would say in an ideal world, he would get traded, but nobody's taking that salary, folks. No.
Yeah, nobody's taking that salary. And I mean, did they go to him and ask him to restructure, and he didn't? I mean, they asked everybody else. I'm still scratching.
Well, he'll have a job if he gets caught. That's the thing. But he won't be making that. He won't be making that. Probably won't even be making half of that.
You look at it when he hasn't did no zone stuff. He hasn't been on any type of promotional stuff. So that right was on the wall a long time ago. So I guess
give him the cold shoulder.
He's on the clock. He's on the clock. The world gonna see. Come Friday, Saturday. What they're gonna do with Trent Murphy. I mean, do they trade him? I mean, right now I think they're probably trying to shop him. They're trying to shop him, and you probably won't hear anything on Trent status till probably Saturday. So you just have to wait and see. But I don't think he makes a squad based on the fact that what the Bills have brought in. Mike Love had an excellent camp last year until he got hurt. Mm-hmm. So he showed flashes again during that scrimmage. I mean, he was a force to be reckoned with out there. Yeah. So with that being said, I got to go with that guy. Like, I can't just keep going with my usual suspects. I got to go, with that guy, so, and it's cheaper for him to keep him, than to deal with, Trent Murphy. And, he had an opportunity last year, didn't play up to it. That's why, the Bills went crazy up front. The game is won up front, and they brought guys in, to get the job done. Trent Murphy at that $8 million hasn't been getting it. He hasn't played up to, his money value. So didn't take the pay cut. Got to get cut another way.
Joe Source, are you afraid that Murphy started to come out at the end of the season if you cut him? Because I feel like that is the one thing people talk about anytime there is an inverse to the point of, hey, we need to cut Trent Murphy. There's no point he should be here. That $8 million sticks out like a sore thumb, and Brandon Beane loves his money. But here's the thing about Trent Murphy for me is you've never seen him flash against, I'll say mediocre talent along the offensive line. You've never seen it. You won't see him go up against Laramie Tunsil in Houston and hand Laramie his ass. You just won't see it. You can't find the game film. He's not a presence in the run in the run game. He's not a presence on the pass rush. There's no point for him to be on this team. They have better options. And obviously, they built that defensive line. You touched on it. They built both. They built both sides of the ball up front. And now here you are, and I'm not concerned about cutting Trent Murphy. You know what? The Patriots can have him. That's how not concerned I am about cutting Trent Murphy. The Patriots can have him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if he go, that's probably a spot where he might end up.
Yeah, I mean, it can happen. Anything can happen. Now, linebacker is always weird with Sean McDermott, and not to mention they have one of the best linebacker coaches in the league, Bob Babbage. Now, the one player I really wish I got to see this preseason who didn't really live up to expectations, in my opinion, last year, and probably would have gotten cut if he didn't get put on IR for a hangnail, Vosean Joseph. Mookie, what have you seen from Vosean Joseph this preseason, and do you think he makes the team?
You know, I didn't see what I thought I would see from Vosean. I don't know if, like, the injuries kind of set him back in reference to getting that on the field, feel back. And, once again, when it's not being no preseason, and you didn't play it for a year, it's kind of hard to really, get that rust off of you. But he still flashes. So I feel that he makes the squad. He's in special teams. I think Tyrell Dobson makes the squad. I think, you got Milano, Edmonds, Klein, Matakevich, Vosean Joseph, and Dotson. Those are your linebackers that makes the squad.
Well, Corey Thompson and Andre Smith. I think if Vosean Joseph doesn't make this team, Corey Thompson does. Personally, I'm not very inclined about this player.
Is Thompson hurt? I think Thompson hurt. I'm not sure.
Is he?
I think Thompson is hurt.
I don't recall, but I'm not very inclined about Andre Smith, who they traded a conditional 2023rd?
Yeah, that's if he makes the team. That's if he makes the team. That was the condition. That was the condition. So if he makes the squad, then they have to give up a 7th-round pick in 2023. Hopefully, the Bills will have a few Super Bowls by then. But
the last pick in the draft, the very last pick in the draft.
Exactly. So you get that, and it don't hurt you to bring a guy in and see where he is. So it's just like guys like that, special teams guy, we need that. You want to have seasoned, experienced guys, because this year of COVID, you're going to see the most experienced teams. You're going to see a difference out of the most experienced teams. That's why I say Bills it should be heavy for us, because they're the most experienced team as far as continuity, having guys on the team that's been there. I mean, we really don't – all our starters return with the addition of the superstar Stephon Diggs, So I don't see where teams have more continuity and experience in reference to a scheme, being in the scheme from a long period of time, more than the Buffalo Bills. I mean, you got Kansas City Chiefs offense. They're well-oiled machine Super Bowl champions. You got the Baltimore Ravens. But, we should have beat Baltimore last year. We just didn't know how to, win ball games. That's a sign of a good young team. Kansas City, hey, we gonna see what Kansas City. We gonna see what Kansas City do for the work this year. So this is where our defense get their respect on what would have happened if we wouldn't have got past Houston. So we still got those guys on the list, and I think that it's going to be a real treat to see. They got to go out and destroy the Jets week 1. You're going to see what I mean by that continuity real quick.
I think we're in the same frame of mind as to how that Jets game is going to go in a couple of weeks. Now, cornerback. I see 4 locks. Trey, obviously, Levi, Josh Norman, and Teron Johnson. After that, how many corners do you have them keeping and who?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 corners. Normally you would keep 6 because you got those guys, but you know
they like safeties. They love their safeties.
They love the safeties, right? You know, when you look at this Bills roster, from offense and defense, the guys that has position flexibility, intangible players, guys that can play more than one position. So when you really look at the guys on the team, okay, you got Trey White, you got Josh Norman, like you said, Levi and Teron. After that, you have Cam Lewis, you have Dane Jackson, and
Brian Allen.
Yeah, Brian Allen. Brian Allen, and you know, and that's all of this stuff is tough. Like, damn, how do you cut a guy that's 6'3", 215 and runs a 4.48? I don't think he has practice squad eligibility anymore. But you got Dane Jackson that you drafted in the 7th round who has practice squad eligibility. But you know, how important is he to you in the special teams realm of things? You got a guy like Cam Lewis last year who flashed for being undrafted out of right here in Buffalo. And, you know, he had just issues with concussions. That's what was setting back. But he maintained to be on the practice squad all year. So when you look at those scenarios, it's like, damn, that was a tough decision. That was more tougher than me picking a wide receiver.
Really?
Yeah. So when it comes down to it, the deciding factor, I say it again, I'm sticking to what I know. Okay, so therefore I say Cam Lewis is that 5th guy. Cam Lewis would be the 5th guy. It hurt me to cut Allen, to cut Dane Jackson, a draft pick, but we know that Dane Jackson is going to be on that practice squad. 7th round draft pick, he's going to be on that practice squad. It just hurted me to cut 6'3", 215. I wish somebody make me out a liar with that. 6'3", 215. I just think that he just didn't have enough time to even show anything to make the roster. So that's why, like, I don't choose him over Cam because Cam been there, you know, and then Cam has been playing, you know, multiple positions. So once again, position flexibility, a guy who knows your system. I'm going to stick with the guy I know. So we're going to go with 5 cornerbacks right now.
I'm with
injury issues, with a lot of hammies.
Now, see, I'm going to go off the beaten path because I don't think we've seen Sean McDermott do this really since he's come to Buffalo, because he's always had a boatload of corners, and they're always all active, every single one.
Right.
Oh, I think they're only going to keep 4 this year. I think they're only going to keep 4 safeties, that being Poyer, Hyde, Saran Neal, Jaquan Johnson, and I don't think D. Marlowe makes the team. And I think they do keep 10 defensive backs, so they keep 6 corners, and they keep Dane Jackson and Brian Allen, because, like you said, that prototypical size, that prototypical speed, you can't teach those traits. You just can't. You cannot teach somebody those traits, and in this kind of scheme, there's a lot of upside with Brian Allen. Just a waiver pickup. There's a lot of upside with that. And I think that's exactly why they brought him to the team. And they like Dane Jackson. They wouldn't have drafted him if they didn't like him. I understand he's a 7th round pick, and this team isn't really afraid of cutting draft picks. But, I mean, this is more so of a question for you. Have you seen enough from Dane Jackson to think that he's definitely in consideration to make this roster?
I've seen enough to know that he needs to develop. I mean, a 7th round pick normally doesn't make the roster. I mean, but you got Daryl Johnson, who was a 7th round pick, who made the roster. You got Sweeney, 7th round pick, who made the roster. So once again, if you read into what Brandon Beane says, I'm going to bring a guy in that could potentially be a starter. We don't want to waste a draft pick, whether it's the 1st round or the 7th round. We don't want to waste. We want to make sure we're bringing in a guy that can compete and push for a roster spot. That's why you see this roster here is probably the most competitive rosters that you didn't see in a long time, top to bottom, you know, from the Buffalo Bills. And I gotta go with what I know with Cam Lewis. He's been playing the nickel. He's been playing outside. Dane has been more or less special teams. And then you look at it. Allen is a special teams guy. When you look at it from Seattle, when you look at him in Pittsburgh, he thrived on special teams as well. So do you keep an extra guy because of that? I wouldn't be mad at that. I wouldn't be mad at that. But I don't think it's unfair to the guys that's been there. So that's why I say I'm sticking with the guys that I know. And, maybe we can bring Allen in, at some point, first guy in. You never know because, these corners go down. They're just like receivers. You can't know. I think Marlowe makes the team. The Bills go with 5 safeties. They go with Jaquan Johnson, or you keep Marlowe. Jaquan Johnson don't make the team, and you put him on the practice squad again because he's practice squad eligible as well. You got to look at this 16 guy practice squad team as well. So I can see him going that route. I can see him going that route as well. Johnson getting cut and putting on a practice squad, but D. Marlowe makes this team. Hands down, D. Marlowe makes this team. D. Marlowe was out there with a white jersey on at times, so he's D. Marlowe's going to make the squad. He's in their plans. I mean, he's a McDermott guy. Sometimes you make the team by, hey, I like you. Robert Foster might make the team because, that's Dable's guy. I like the guy.
Yep.
Marlowe's on the team because that's my guy for Carolina. I like Marlowe. He knows my stuff. How can you get rid of guys like that? Mm-hmm. Especially at this time, this pandemic. You need all the guys right now to know your stuff as much as possible because there's no games being played. They ain't got time to teach it, really. You got to have it right now. And right now, I'm sticking with one I know. That's why Cam Lewis makes my roster. That's why Dean Marlowe makes my roster. You got Saran Neal who can play everything, which is nickel, big slot, outside, safety. Yep. So that's, that position flexibility in reference to the cornerbacks. So I do think that the Bills do take 5 safeties, though.
I think you're going to see a breakout year for Saran Neal. I think you're going to see him get more opportunities than he's ever been given because I don't believe health has really ever been an issue for him. He's going to his 3rd or 4th year? I think it's his 3rd year.
This is 3rd year. He came in with the Josh Allen. That 2018 is a solid class from the Bills.
Yep. Now, I think you're going to see Saran Neal break out this year, which is why I kind of felt more comfortable with cutting D. Marlowe because that's the position he typically plays was that quote-unquote big nickel with that 3 safety look. Yeah. And it was really just that was their competition was they competed for the big nickel. But you're right. Sean McDermott does love D. Marlowe. He has followed that. I think D. Marlowe's been with McDermott ever since he's came into the league, to be quite honest.
They have an understanding with Dean Marlowe. Okay, so I don't think Dean Marlowe gets cut, man. He's an instrumental guy in that locker room. Special teams, you got to look at all of that stuff. So we have an understanding with Dean Marlowe. We cut him once before. We brought him back, So, he's just a Buffalo guy. I don't think he want to go anywhere. So whatever the Bills want to do with him, whether they want to cut him and bring him in, he's all for that. So I just don't see D. Marlowe not making the squad.
Yeah, I mean, perfectly understandable. I mean, do you have any surprises for punter or kicker? I think it's pretty straightforward.
They got that over it real quick. Right after the scrimmage, they addressed that real quick. So there's no surprises there. You got Bojo as the punter, you got Tyler Bass as the kicker, and you got Reed Ferguson long snapper right now. So, those are your 3. So, that completes everything. We didn't get D tackle. You got your 4 guys. I took Oliver, Quentin Butler, Horrible Harry, and Quentin Jefferson. I took 4 D tackles. So, there you go. Our center is Mitch Morris and Evan Bain. He backs him up. So your backup guys got to make the squad. So Evan Bain is the backup center. He makes the squad. So that rounds off our 53. I hope he was nice, informative, and very informational to everybody.
Now, I mean, hey, before we cut this short, I want to know, does Evan Boehm get cut when John Feliciano was activated?
No.
No, really?
Who knows if John Feliciano get activated this year? He tore a pec. Now, we understand everybody ain't J.J. Watt, right? And I understand him being optimistic because potentially they can push some games back due to COVID. Mm-hmm. So that gives him some more healing time. maybe, maybe not. He said the 12th. We'll just keep an eye on it and, take it day by day with Feliciano. But right now, get healthy, my guy. Get healthy first.
Hey, I always love the insight from Muki Hawkins. Hey, Mook, here at the end of the show, you got anything you want to shout out or plug?
Well, once again, I want to plug Cold Front for, giving me this platform to, to get on here and, speak my piece a little bit by, having that, the access that I have, with the Bills. Just make sure you, keep it locked to, Wellful Sports Report. We're on Power 96.5 every Sunday. We do have fantasy leagues going on right now. So, we have a lot of projects in the works. So just make sure y'all, just stay tuned to Cold Front. You know what I mean? I'll let you know all about that stuff, or you can catch me on my Facebook, Twitter page, Muki Hawkins, and see all my crazy little skits and my Zoom meetings with all these guys every week.
Hey, it's excellent content. Bill's dad approves. Muki, thanks for asking such great questions during interviews. You've become one of my favorites. I agree with Bill's dad.
Not a problem, man. Hey, check me out. You got my name, man. Request me.
Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Cold Front Report on Twitter, at Cold Front Report _ Bills News on Instagram. It's late, folks. It's almost 11 p.m. We've been going for an hour strong. 53-man rock. Well,
and don't forget to tune into that Yak podcast as well, my man.
Yes,
JP
sir.
And Mallory. Y'all want to miss all that good stuff y'all getting there from Gurus there.
Do not miss the Yak podcast with Jeremy Turner Montgomery and James Mallory. And also, don't forget to tune into the Overtime podcast with myself and Jeff Uvino. We will be revamping that. The new episode is releasing, I think, Friday, maybe tomorrow night. We'll see. If you guys stay tuned to figure it out. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Stay safe.